Hello, class. I think it's amazing that we are already on our last discussion for this course. These last 6 or 7 weeks or so have flown by quite fast. I've really enjoyed this class quite a bit. For my research project, I decided to research the spies George Washington used during the Revolution. There were a few famous people that popped up right away, one of which was the famous Culper ring that was out of Sawtucket, New York. There are also a couple of people that were not as famous, like Lydia Dara. She was a woman who risked everything, her family, and her own life to help America win their independence from Great Britain. When the British forces took control of Philadelphia, they had set up their headquarters right across the street from Lydia's house. Needing more space to hold their meetings, the British forced her to use one of her upstairs rooms as a conference room. She would eavesdrop during these meetings, write down the information on tiny slips of paper, and then would sew those tiny pieces of paper into buttons. Then she would sew those buttons onto her 14-year-old son John's jacket. John would then go visit his brother Charles, who was a lieutenant in the Continental Army. Charles would then pass the information on to his superiors. One night, during an emergency meeting that the British troops had, she overheard plans for an attack on Washington's army at White Marsh. With such dire information, she did not want to risk anyone else's life, so she decided to make the trip alone and warn the Continental Army. Before sunrise on December 4th, Lydia wrapped herself up in a gray wool cape and headed towards Washington's camp. As she drew closer, she came across an American officer on horseback. Luckily, Lydia knew exactly who the person was. It was a friend of hers, Captain Charles Craig. She told him what she had heard. He rushed back to headquarters and informed Washington of the news. When the British Army arrived at White Marsh, they were met by cannons from the Continental Army. General Howe, who was in command of the British troops, ordered them to retreat back to Philadelphia. Now that's just one story I was able to uncover about the spies that Washington had, and I don't want to go too deep into my project and ruin any of the surprises. What I did do was I've already started my final presentation. I was able to take a short adventure to film on location, and it was a pretty great experience. I saw some pretty cool things. So if anybody wants to watch it, it will be on my YouTube channel probably, well, at least by Sunday night when it's due. And honestly, what I found out was if it wasn't for the spies that Washington had, in my opinion, I really don't think the Continental Army or George Washington would have been able to beat British forces. Thank you all for a wonderful class. I look forward to your responses, and hopefully we have some classes together in the future. Have a good night.